Weather Center, and in today's video, we'll be talking about rounds of severe weather through this weekend as we're on the northern periphery of extreme heat that continues to build across the desert southwest and the southern plains. Before we get in today's video, make sure if you are new to the channel for additional weather updates on this channel, make sure you get subscribed down below and also press the thumbs up button to get this information out to as many people as possible. I do appreciate that. But looking currently at our heat headlines across the north central United States, we have lots of heat advisories in the orange here. And in the pink colors, we actually have excessive heat warnings, and that covers much of our Illinois counties here into southeastern portions of Iowa, northeastern Missouri, getting into portions there of northeast Kansas, southeastern Nebraska, and up around the Twin Cities there into Minnesota. So we have a lot of heat headlines, and as such, we have the northern periphery of that ridge over our northernmost hometowns across South Dakota, getting into Minnesota, Wisconsin, and lower Michigan there, with the more extreme heat building down here into our southernmost hometowns across Kansas, Missouri, and southern Illinois today. But as we go through this weekend, we're still going to be on that northwest flow. So we're still going to be on the northeastern periphery of that ridge. So the heat will be more extreme in our southern and southwestern areas, and more relief and less extreme from the heat as we get into our northern and more northeastern areas this weekend. So looking at today's high temperatures, another scorcher of a day it will be. Temperatures will be in the mid and upper 90s all the way across the Dakotas, especially into South Dakota through Nebraska and getting into Kansas. Kansas and Missouri in our southern areas will be very hot today. We're getting up to 105 Fahrenheit there, especially around Kansas City, Topeka, Wichita, and over there into the Ozarks this afternoon. Then as we go into Friday, we have some relief across our northern areas, across portions especially into North Dakota, north central Minnesota, into northern Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, and at least northern lower Michigan as well on Friday. Temperatures there will be held down into the 70s and 80s with that cold front coming through and more cloud cover and storm chances. And underneath that here, where the cold front has not come through tomorrow, it's going to be another scorcher. We're back to 100 to 105 here from the Illinois Valley back through the mid-Missouri Valley and the Central Plains for your Friday afternoon high temperatures. And looking at the storm reports from yesterday, we had a couple complexes move through our eastern areas here across the southern Great Lakes, bringing some widespread wind damage there across northern Illinois, southern lower Michigan, across portions there in northern Indiana and northern Ohio. And some of that even moved out of our area into northwest Pennsylvania as well. We had some scattered bouts of hail and damaging winds across the Dakotas, Minnesota, and down into Nebraska as well, and into northwest Kansas from Wednesday. But looking here at today's outlook, the Storm Prediction Center maintains a level 2 out of 5, a slight risk of severe weather from the Twin Cities eastward into north central Wisconsin, near the La Crosse region and Eau Claire, Wisconsin, as we go into this afternoon. And there's no surprise here. We have instability values well in excess of 2,000 joules per kilogram, so plenty of fuel for these thunderstorms to develop. And we also have to watch the hazards in which these storms could produce some damaging winds in excess of 74 miles per hour across eastern Minnesota and north central Wisconsin later today, as well as the threat for 2-inch or larger diameter hailstones, especially around eastern Minnesota near the Minneapolis-St. Paul vicinity, St. Cloud, and then getting up toward Duluth there as well and into northwest Wisconsin. We also do have a very small 2% shading for tornadoes, but an isolated tornado or two today will be possible, especially getting into northwest Wisconsin. So it looks like it's going to be quiet for most of the day. The cap holds strong. It's a lid on the atmosphere, and that pops off as we go into early this evening. And we start to see more supercells explosively developing across the UP of Michigan here on the western side of the UP, getting into northern Wisconsin and eastern Minnesota there. And then as the evening goes on, a lot of the models I've been looking at here, besides this one, have an MCS moving across Wisconsin here, across central Wisconsin overnight. This kind of breaks it up. While it is possible, I think it's more likely we start to see probably more of an MCS moving across southern Wisconsin, getting into the overnight hours, arriving into the northern suburbs of the Chicagoland area early Friday morning. And then as we go into Friday, we start to see more scattered severe weather, at least across the southern Great Lakes, getting into the Midwest here, from Iowa through southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, southern lower Michigan again, northern Indiana, and northwest Ohio here. There's still some chance this gets upgraded to an enhanced risk in later outlooks here, especially if a more mature MCS complex develops later on in the day. And the reason why is look at the Cape values, especially given the nod to the 12Z NAM here. It's been fairly decent with the Cape values. The HRRR actually mixes out the dew points rather significantly, which I really don't agree with. We have evapotranspiration with the corn crops and bean crops out there, as well as recent rainfall. So I think instability will be in excess of 3,000, if not 4,000 joules per kilogram up here across the Midwest and the southern Great Lakes region. And you can see explosive development by Friday afternoon. The morning convection that comes through with anything that happens Thursday night here tonight upstream into the upper Midwest could have a little effect on the storms later in the day. We'll have to watch out for that, but it looks like some explosive supercells south central Wisconsin into northeast Iowa centered around the Des Moines region, Waterloo, Prairie du Chien, and then eastward toward Green Bay by mid to late afternoon Friday. This also, again, this is the HRRR model. It shows the dew points mixing out, not as intense as storms. I do think there could be a more mature MCS moving across this region into the southwest Great Lakes Friday evening into the overnight. If that does occur, widespread damaging winds in excess of 70 miles per hour, quarter size hail or larger, and a few tornadoes will be possible, something we'll have to keep an eye on. Then as we get into early next week, the long-term pattern has that northwest flow continuing. We're on the northeastern periphery of that ridge up around the Great Lakes in the Midwest, with the extreme heat remaining in our southwestern locales here into Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri. We start to see the heat flex its muscles again by the middle of next week as we get into early August. On Wednesday, August 2nd. That starts to bring that red shaded color and that maroon red further into the Midwest. That will support highs into the 90s, if not triple digits, again next week. And you can see that here on Monday, temperatures back into the triple digits again into the Missouri Valley, into the Central Plains. We are cooler with the northwest flow behind that cold front early next week across the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley. Temperatures there will be in the 70s and 80s. Then as it flexes its muscles again to the northeast, middle of next week, we could bump temperatures back up into around 90 degrees from the Twin Cities down through Chicago and Indianapolis, with more of the extreme heat from the Ozarks and St. Louis on westward through the Central Plains. We're back into the triple digits there through the middle of next week at least. And this is a very classic look to a ring of fire pattern that we usually see this time of year, mid to late summer, early next week. A very potent jet stream over the top of that. We have to watch for some complexes of severe weather. And then I think that actually prevails through late in the week before the pattern starts to slowly break down by next weekend. So we'll have to keep an eye on this pattern because the EPS ensemble guidance, the precipitation anomaly through August 6th actually is fairly nice, with the precipitation up here across our north central plains and getting into the Midwestern regions with that west-northwest or just dominant northwest flow. And that we have to watch for severe weather. These complexes could originate in the eastern Dakotas and Nebraska and then move east-southeast through our Illinois Valley and into the Ohio Valley as we go through that first week in August especially. So that will be something to watch for additional chances for heavy rain and severe weather. Other than that, we'll be watching out for the heat building across that region. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys liked today's video. Make sure to subscribe if you're new for updates, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your Thursday.